Dungeon Doomhands Let's Talk Lore, a podcast.
How to
Yes.
roleplay as a D&D villain effectively.
Okay.
Let's get after it, as you say.
Let's
Roll
get
high
after
and
it.
subscribe. Get
right.
after it.
So, something that I find is always important for really role playing the villain is having or just building up the villain with who he is, finding their motivation, really filling out their backstory to understand how how they are going to interact with the
Right.
world.
So
How-
like a compelling motivation.
Yeah. So something that like draws them. Um, what is drawing them in the world? What is their goal? Like they're striving to do something. The way I like to think about it when building Evil Titan Tamer
Right.
was I imagine I'm playing a game of D&D with that PC, that evil PC, like what we did with Doomhand. It's like we played the game, we built that backstory, we built their character, and building their desires and goals and what they're striving for in their life the same, I would build any other character I play.
Right. And it's funny because it's like to make a compelling motivation for your villain, you have to be able to sort of relate to it. That's the main
Mm-hmm.
thing. So like if you're evil for evil's sake, um, I feel like it's harder to. I don't think people are primarily evil. There are certainly people out there that think everyone's bad, but I don't think so. We're more
I don't either.
optimistic here on this channel, and I think that having a villain that's just evil, well, for like maybe the beginners, that's how you start. But having the backstory that you can relate to, I feel like is is part of that. Obviously, that's the motivation. How you weave that into the game, um, I feel like obviously it depends on the certain game that you're playing and the characters, but you can, if you don't want to do like a lore drop, like
Mm-hmm.
that's where I get a little cloudy with the motivation type thing that you're talking about because it's like you have to like do a nice big lore drop to sort of explain it, but you don't have to do a lore drop all at once either. You can
Well, you don't
drop the
have to.
clues. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to do the lore drop. You can have the story be the lore drop
Right.
of like the pattern of where events take place, of showing where they're moving, or the whatever acts that they're doing are building or getting bigger or more intense, or showing, or maybe even connecting with players' backstories in certain ways.
Right.
It's like they connect in with their of like some crazy thing happened to them when they're a child, and it just so happens that it was indirectly caused by your big bad guy.
Right. So, like, let's say, for example, Doomhand. Doomhand, we
Mm,
know, is creating this large zombie army, and we also know that he's on the hunt for those skulls. So, like, how do you bring that personality out? So, one of the main things you have your compelling motivation and the backstory of the character, and that you can relate to.
mm-hmm.
In our story, I did just made a Greek myth and I flipped it up on the Greek myth side. It's a compelling story. I think at least our last guest Adam said it was he said it was like you sort of started feeling bad for the dude.
Well, I think that's
I hope you don't feel too bad for the guy, but it would be funny if like people were
well,
like, you know what, let's kill the gods. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great engagement point that you brought in there. Is you told that backstory, that history, and that drew all of us in. That drew the players in. I know Stag and a lot of other players, or my older characters who are now dead. You guys are great.
R.I.P.
Um, they, I mean, me as a person, I feel bad for Doomhand and the story because it's very sad.
Right.
But I know some of my players felt not necessarily compelled to help him, but felt understood his plight I
Right.
think is the best way of saying that. And having multiple layers of your character, it's not just they're all evil. Like you're saying, it's like there's this other human side of, or whatever, not human race side of it, but there's this personable side of them. They are a person too. They were a child at one point. They had a normal life before X happened to them that created them into what they are today.
Right. So you have these like we have like a motivational motive. We've got his motive. We understand what he's after and what he's doing. But then you have to do a little. You have to sprinkle. You have to go even further now, and get into that character, like the specific actions that he takes, and also his personality. So one of the things I was reading online says that to play a villain, the villain should have, maybe not should, but could have quirks, or the tone of his voice, or something. As you said before we were talking about this, you said something that is memorable, or
Memorable.
something. Yeah. So like, does he? The example I read was tap his fingers a lot in nervousness. Like imagine the pet, not the pet peeves, but imagine like someone in real life that I used. Okay, here's a story. There was a worker that we had, awesome mechanic, and he would always, for whatever reason, he would take out a napkin and he would spit into it. He would fold it and he put it back in his pocket. So it was like instead of like a maybe maybe your villain does something like that. I will always remember that guy for that quirk of his.
Yeah, something little like that. Something that they take for granted.
And you're like, what the hell is going on? And then obviously you steal the napkin, and now you have a disease of some kind. But that's how I would roleplay that. But
yeah,
the personalities, like the tone of his voice, is he charismatic? His body language. So when you're playing the villain, I would say maybe describe a little bit how he is, what his. I'm using my hands to talk right now. Maybe describe him doing that.
right.
Or does he have catchphrases? Does he have something that stands out? I struggle with this sometimes too, but I think that's important, because if you have a guy that's relatable, if you understand his motives, now he has these quirks. Now you're like, what is going on? The quirks and the personality sort of draw you in. I feel
it really creates the character, builds the personality of them instead of just being a name or a face.
And I'm super excited to see what this guy we haven't yet. We played with him when I played Doomhand and you played Evil.
I am very excited.
EL. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm very excited for the party to meet Evil Tetentema.
Yeah.
But he's memorable.
His accent. It's going to be hilarious.
But there's something else that I think is important to bring into role playing your villain, is their drive has to be unending. Like there has to be some great, that motivation has to be firm, has to be strong, and that path that they're taking, that relatable path that the party is following, they have to be able to follow that conclusion, see where they're going, understand how they're thinking to follow that story. And I think if you can tell the story and bring out their personality in the story, and in those moments when you have your epic speech, it's going to make that feel a lot more powerful. Of everyone is there with you.
And to add to that, to increase what you're talking about, which is sort of telling the villain's story, I like to try to sprinkle little elements of him throughout the campaign. So obviously it's an open world. You guys can do whatever you want. When you run into an NPC, maybe you guys are doing a side quest of some kind. You run into an NPC and maybe you have your side quest and you don't know if the NPC is a villain or whatever, but all of a sudden you mention the name Doomhand. That
Mhm.
NPC that doesn't relate to the villain knows of him.
Yeah.
That helps you build your world a little bit.
Yeah.
And
The
also,
stories, the
yeah,
rumors, the myths.
right. You can have even through the myths and stuff, you can have
Mhm.
a foreshadowing of him, sort of
Yeah.
like a seed waiting for. So now, not only do you have the motivations and the personality and the quirks that draw people in, you also have like the threats almost of what he's done. Maybe you run into an NPC that survived one of his zombie apocalypse takeovers of the town of blah blah
Mhm.
blah, and he left a calling card or a mark on someone,
Yeah.
or the town is absolutely, the town was gonna destroy you guys, and then they found out that you're after this Doomhand who just destroyed their village. Um, or maybe you run into the group of people that are praising him,
Yeah.
and you can add details to your character, to your villain,
Yeah.
through NPCs. And I think NPCs, in my opinion, and I'm still working on it. It's always, the dungeon mastering is it's a growing process.
Yeah.
NPCs are so key to developing, like, sort of, to telling the story and telling, like,
Mm.
how powerful is this guy? Well, he wiped out this whole village, but how did he do it? Well, he does this. It's known that he does this type of thing, or
Yeah.
he's hungry for that, and you could give
Well,
clues as to
it's
how to defeat him too.
well, it's like the night before they came, there's a mist that rolled across the fields.
Right.
So before next zombie invasion, the day before, the ground is covered in a mist, so they know it's coming.
Our mist, from the last episode, a cool mist comes beneath your feet, dulling the sounds of your footsteps. Yeah, I mean, I think villains. It's You get overwhelmed. Obviously, overwhelmed is a word I use a lot in Let's Talk Lore, and
Mhm.
it certainly can be. But
Just game in general can get
yeah,
overwhelming
yeah.
at points.
Once you get the backstory, I think that's the most overwhelming part.
Yeah.
Once you get the backstory, cut the thing up into like 6 pieces and put a piece here on your map and put a piece there on your map, and then have an NPC know about that part, have an NPC know about this part. Maybe there was a fight that happened that they can relate to, and I feel like that is just a general script of how to do it. I feel
I
like,
like that.
yeah, right. I mean, it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be too much. You don't.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't want to open the villain's castle and know everything
Right.
about the guy.
Right.
But
But if you've taken the time to go to all these places, by the end you have the whole story.
yeah, and the fun thing about Doomhand is that, and I know that we play every other Monday, and so on and so forth. But Doomhand really hasn't been that involved in the entire story either.
No.
And that's just part of the Dungeons and Dragons, how awesome it is. But
Yeah.
it's like, but the fear of seeing him, the fear of
Oh, the
getting to
fear
him,
of
or
early on, the fear of Doomhand was real, but I think it turned
yeah,
at one point, and now we're the hunters.
yes, you've certainly become the hunters, but soon the hunted. We're gonna see.
The misplaced hunters. But we'll see how you play Doomhand next
Yeah,
time you
and
pick up
hopefully,
back up.
yeah, and hopefully this little spiel on role playing your D&D villain will effectively help you in the next side quest, or 3-year, 4-year campaign, or however long it takes you. But I feel like that's
Yeah.
just a good general description of how to do it.
Yeah.
And that,
Some tips and tricks.
yeah, tips and tricks, baby.
Some fun things we do.
Yeah, roll high, subscribe if you like it. Also, a new thing we're adding here. If you want us to talk about something, drop it in the comment. Be happy to talk about whatever it is you want. If you want to also join us, there will be a roster that you can join to too. But just let us know.
Dungeon Doomhands Let's Talk Lore, a podcast.